see us? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, hello. There's a lot of stuff going on here and a lot of information. So we wanted to prepare together with Agnieszka very concise information about what problems we faced and what are the key outcomes when it comes to Polish system, because we are talking about lots of different examples and we are talking about systemic resolution that we managed to have in Poland. So hello again, my name is Maciej Taube. Together with Agnieszka, we will give you some details in 20 minutes about the Polish integrated qualification system. So hello, great to see you. In education, cooperation is the key. So inviting all the stakeholders to create education and to manage education is probably the most challenging aspect of creating a system based on qualifications, because you cannot know everything. You need stakeholders, you need businesses, you need people from sectors to create qualification that will be valuable for the system of education. That's why we think that building the coalitions and building the bridges between sectors, not only in one sector, but between sectors, and building coalitions on the level of the country are key aspects. For example, in our case scenario for Poland is the key, because when we learned from Western countries, a lot of stuff happens in the Western countries on the bottom. So you have two methodologies. You have bottom up or top down. And for countries in the Western hemisphere, the bottom up mechanism is a natural mechanism. For countries as Poland, bottom up mechanism does not really always work. And in the cases like qualifications and educations, very often it is expected from us to impose the top-down method. So we create the environment for stakeholders to participate in creating qualifications. So I think this is one of the key aspects and key takeaways that we have from our example in Poland. Without the top-down methodology, it will be very difficult to create the environment for qualifications here in Poland, to have qualifications on a more general and related level. Because why we did that, as education is the key. Without education, we have no future. So we have to focus on education. And the key aspect of education, as we think about it, are the learning outcomes. Because we talk a lot about education, but talking about learning outcomes is talking about precise, specific things. Because education is general, learning outcomes are a key to every qualification and to every educational system. And nowadays, learning outcomes are the universal currency of education in almost every country in the world. If you talk about education with Canada, with Ireland, with Germany, with Australia, with Hong Kong, with Japan, our international currency is learning outcomes, because with learning outcomes, we can show exactly what competences we have in qualifications. And that is exactly the work we had to do with Polish qualifications, to simply state what are exactly the competences that Polish qualifications give to every learner that is interested in acquiring qualification. So the cooperation is key, and the learning outcomes are the key component that that forced us to create the environment, to create those learning outcomes and create learning outcomes that will be understandable throughout the context. So in European Union, as you know, because Arjen was mentioning it on Tuesday, so I changed a bit this presentation not to repeat Arjen. So we have the European qualifications framework. You know that our national qualifications framework are reference to the European qualifications framework. For us, this is very important. For us, it's building bridges among our countries and through education, to empower our people and to give qualifications that are understandable, especially to employers, because employers know who they employ. If the qualification is written in learning outcomes and it is really shown what was proven in the validation process for the learner. So you know about learning outcomes, you know what we did that because we believe in learning outcomes, and we believe that written and developing learning outcomes that state exactly the level of competence, because I don't know whether it is mentioned that the levels are really important because the levels show the levels of competence. And I can only, as a context, show you that the Bloom's methodology, the Bloom's taxonomy, showing that on the highest level we have creating, on the level we have remembering. And this is not saying that someone that creates is better than someone who remembers. It is simply showing at what level is the competence. And for us in our system, this was also a game changer because this shows clarity. This shows precisely the level of competence in each qualification, no matter if it's qualification from tourism or qualification from science or qualification from transport. If somebody in transport is creating, his level of competence is higher than someone who can only, for example, remember or understand something. So this is quite important when it comes to levels, and this is quite important why we bought the concept, why we were so much inspired by the concept of the European qualifications framework and the levels, because we see clarity in creating competence and creating qualifications. So this is why we as Poland were determined to reference our system to the European qualifications framework. And this is why we're so determined to create learning outcomes according to the EQF and EQF taxonomy, just to make it clear for everybody what is in every qualification. So after this short introduction, I will now focus a bit on the Polish qualification system, because as you can see, no matter the country in the European Union, and not only because also the European Economic Area, but also we've seen a mechanism of transforming Australian or Canadian qualifications framework and referencing to the EQF. So you can see, you can build the connection between the frameworks of not only European countries, but also countries in the world. So it makes education really transparent, and it makes empowering the people even more obvious. So the Polish qualifications framework, we in Poland passed a bill. So you've heard about the top-down methodology. So we passed a bill in 2015 that implemented the Polish integrated qualification system to the Polish law. It was signed by the president in 2016, and since 2016 we also, as the Educational Research Institute, we're building the IQS in Poland. And as you can see, we followed all the guidelines set by the European qualifications framework. We were so happy to have the possibility to learn from the Dutch, to learn from the Irish, to learn from the Great, to learn from the Brits and from the Germans and from the Spaniards. As well, we have the opportunity also to be here and tell you a little bit about our experiences in a country like Poland. So taking all this into consideration, we our referencing exactly as it is in the EQF, because you may know that, for example, the Irish have more levels than the EQF, but still all the levels in the Irish framework are referenced to the European qualifications framework the same way we are. But our reference is point to point with the European qualifications framework. So you can see the Polish qualifications framework, 8 levels. We have up to 4 levels of the EQF, PQF. We have the typical for general education in Poland, and also vocational education and training also has a 5th level of EQF, of Polish PQF, and again, as well as all the European Union countries, higher education is 6th, 7th, and 8th level of the EQF Polish qualifications framework. So we are referenced point to point with the EQF, with our qualifications in Poland. And what types of qualifications do we have in Poland? One type of qualifications that we have are the formal qualifications. So every qualification stemming from education system is a formal qualification. So when you finish primary school, lower secondary, upper secondary school, or you have finished your vocational education, you receive a full formal qualification with the PQF, EQF level. And all the levels in formal education were assigned automatically by passing the bill. So we made the reference of all the formal qualifications to the European qualification framework level, meaning also Polish qualifications framework level. The same case is for formal qualifications stemming from higher education. So we have bachelor degree, master's degree, complementary 6th and 7th levels of the EQF, and the PhD on the 8th level. So those are the formal qualifications. We have also regulated qualifications stemming from various acts of law. For example, an example of a qualification being regulated is very popular driving license. We do not have a level of Polish qualifications framework, European qualifications framework assigned to the driving license, but it is a type of formal regulated qualification. We are now working on on regulated qualifications with an EQF level, but we are on the beginning of this route. So then again, the most important and something new in the system were market qualifications. We call them market qualifications because this is the type of qualifications that can be put in the system, in the Polish system, by almost everyone. Meaning, if you conduct a business, if you are a firm, if you do any economic activities, you can create your own qualification. Meaning, also representatives of the sectors, for example, tourism, transport, sport, and so on. They can create their own qualifications that can be put in the system. They can be assigned to the certain ministry. The ministry conducts the procedure of introducing the qualification to the system, and to every market qualification that went through the system, we have assigned EQF, PQF level, and we have right about now we have something around 200 such qualifications in the Polish system with assigned EQF level. What does that mean? It means that every qualification can be put in the system if it goes through the process of implementation in the system, and also the level assigned. So you have the formal qualifications, no need for any special procedures because ministers take care of, especially Ministry of Science and Education takes care of formal qualifications, but also every qualification, market qualification, can be put in the system if it goes through the procedure. So you can still have a lot of qualifications in the market, but they will not have assigned EQF, PQF level. If you want to have an assigned PQF, EQF level, you must go through the procedure in each certain ministry that is concerned with subject matter. So for example, if you have a CNC qualification, those machines that create various stuff, you need to go to the Ministry of Economy. If you want to have a qualification from sport, for example, fitness instructor, you need to go to the Ministry of Sport to have these qualifications introduced to the system and assigned PQF level. As you can see, this is a very simple scheme showing that our minister coordinator for the IQS is the Ministry of Science and Education. He conducts all the work for the system, but in Polish system, every ministry is responsible for the qualifications from their sector. So for example, if you have the Ministry of Environment, so every qualification that is concerned with environment that is need to be introduced to the system, Ministry of Environment and Climate will be responsible for putting the qualification in the system and for assigning the PQF, EQF level to the qualification. So as you can see, you have the systems, and we have a national registry for qualifications and in this registry, you have all the formal qualification stemming from the system, and you also have all the market qualifications that went through the procedure in the ministries and are put in the system. So all those qualifications are in the integrated qualifications register here in Poland. You can access this register with no problem. It's also translated in English, so the basic information you will always find about the Polish Integrated Register. The links will be also available for you at the end of the presentation. So as you can see, this procedure simply shows everything that I told you about the procedure and about the stakeholders that take part in creating and building the system based on the bill that passed in 2015. So now I will give the floor to Agnieszka, and Agnieszka will tell you a bit about how the sectoral, how the sectors in Poland also engage in creating and developing integrated qualification system. Aga?
Thank you, Maciek. Hello. Very briefly about our sectoral approach to qualifications. Polish sectoral qualifications frameworks are the example of third stage general descriptors of the Polish qualifications framework. I will explain it in a minute. We have 3 stages generic descriptors in our framework. It is quite innovative, and we find this very useful. This qualifications framework, sectoral qualifications frameworks, further detail second stage generic descriptors typical for vocational education and training. So they translate PQF descriptors in a way that makes them understandable to sectors representatives and present the hierarchy of the qualifications levels functioning in given sectors. They always must be made by sector for the sector in order to gain acceptance by the main interested groups. And this approach to develop sectoral qualifications framework is unique, as I told, and we find it very useful. This approach is in order to search for better qualifications that are relevant for the sector, that are transparent, that are reliable, flexible, because they can be built from out of building blocks. They support lifelong learning in given sector, and they are formative because they talk about the future market skills. As I said, these are third stage general descriptors. So as you see, we have PQF, we have universal descriptors, we have second stage general descriptors for formal education, so general education and higher education, and we have descriptors for vocational education and training, both formal and non-formal education. And the third stage are sectoral qualification frameworks that can be built on all of 8 PQF levels, but it's not always the case, as you can see on the scheme. These are examples of our approach to building SQFs. You can see SQF A on level 3 to 7 PQF, or for example, SQF B on level 1 to 8 and half levels, for example. It is told us by sector which levels are the most important for qualifications in given branch or given sector. And some example, here we have level 5 of PQF, universal descriptor, and the example of descriptor, a broad scope of facts, theories, methods, and the dependencies between them. The diverse conditions of conducted activities. These are descriptors for knowledge and understand. This is very, very broad and general. So not everyone knows how to understand such descriptors. This is the example of second stage general descriptor on the same level. So knows and understand the theoretical foundation of the methods and technologies used in the occupation, or selected theories explaining the phenomena and processes relating to the occupation. So we see that in this case, we are talking about vocational context. It is more job-oriented, but still general. And third stage, this is the example for sports sector, knows and understands the solutions that allow him/her to independently conduct sports training processes with person having specific needs. The various principles of selecting methods, forms, and means used in a given sport, also in terms of the specific needs of sports participants. Knows the basic terms and phenomena of other areas supporting occupational activities. So as you see on this example, the stakeholders, the sectoral staff knows what does it mean to have the qualification on PQF, SQF level 5. What does it mean in their given branch or sector? It is written in a much more complex and detailed way. Of course, one can use first or second degree, but for sectoral stakeholders, it is much more simply. Our sectoral qualifications frameworks are always built by the sector for the sector. This is our main approach. What does it mean? Initial SQF project must be always made by sector representatives, sector expert teams, and the composition of each expert team should represent the sector in a qualitative way. So these are representatives of companies, main industry, organizations, formal and non-formal education and training institution, etc. In a case of sports sector, we had also representatives of Ministry of Sport, for example. And the projects, initial projects, must be always verified by sector's representatives. So representatives of the main interest groups of the sector should have the opportunity to express their opinion about the initial project. And the SQF's initial project should be modified on the basis of these opinions. And in our experience, from our experience, we know that it is a great way to consolidate the sector and around the topics of qualifications and long life learning. In many cases, works on the SQFs initiated the establishment of sectoral skills councils. Now, I can tell that we have 18 sectoral qualifications frameworks. 5 of them are included in our Polish law. So they were established in our integrated qualification system by given ministries. But we have 18 projects, including construction, fashion industry, trade, public health, agriculture, automotive, chemical industry, mining, real estate, waste management, water and sewage management, reclamation and remediation industry, food processing industry, and market communication. Thank you very much.
As you can see, we are trying to have a very coherent approach when it comes to qualifications. It's not an easy task, because if you think that we are a success story, partly yes, we are a success story. But it was not easy to develop the integrated qualification system, and it's still not easy to develop integrated qualification system in Poland, because a lot of stakeholders still have doubts. There are a lot of discrepancies when it comes to understanding occupation, qualification, education, and so on. So the glossary that you were mentioning, that Jezda and also Arjen was mentioning, building an understandable through a lot of stakeholders glossary is probably the key aspect of building a system, so that we are all at the same pace and that we understand stuff the same way. So this is probably one of the crucial also takeaways for you when you are thinking about building such a system. And then again, you need to really need to know your environment, because we were always very much amazed by the systems, for example, working in Ireland, in Scotland, and in the Netherlands. It was fantastic to see how they work, but when we try to, put some of those experiences in Poland, well, it was not really working because, as I told you, those countries are really keen on working from the bottom up. And unfortunately, in our case, a lot of stakeholders say that if you don't have it in law, we will not do it. And you will not force us if it's not in the law. So it's not easy implementing such a system here in Poland, but we see a lot of good stuff happening. Agnieszka mentioned the sectoral councils. This is the good stuff because sectors are developing into understanding that building learning outcomes and building clear communication when it comes to competences is the key to building the future of education for them and for the employees. So I think that a lot of good stuff is happening. We are probably on the beginning of our route to a fully functioning qualification system, because when we once were asked in the Netherlands, when did you begin your route to the qualification system? We said, like, 2 years ago. So they said, like, there's a lot of bumps in front of you, and there's a lot of work to be done, because the Western systems started in the 60s and 70s. When it comes to systems based on learning outcomes, we started in the 21st century, so it's not that easy. But then again, if you will never start, you will never get to the point that you will be happy and satisfied with the transparency and fully functioning system that simply needs to work for your citizens, needs to work for the employees, and needs to work for the people in the country to make education as available as it can be when it comes to lifelong learning, because we know that we start learning after the 25, not before the 25. So then again, thank you a lot. If you have any questions, we are at your service. If you wanted to write us in any way, you can contact us via Nadezhda, I think with no difficulties. You can also access all the information about the Polish qualification system on our web pages. You see the addresses. You will be also giving the addresses via the presentation and via Nadezhda. We have a lot of materials also translated into English, so you can find all the details also in the publications that we provide on our website. So Nadezhda, thanks again for the invitation. It was great to see you and great to be here. So if you need something from us, we are here at your service. We had the possibility to learn from others, and we are happy to also give this possibility to you to learn something from us. So thank you a lot.
So I guess, Nadezhda, I will take over from you here, right? Спасибо большое для этой презентации. Я не видел вопросы.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I have not seen the questions, but I'm sure there will be questions. I have, for example, I have several questions.
The first question is about these sectoral frameworks. Are there any sectoral are these sectors, did you create any permanent structures, or do you only invite these sector representatives to develop these sectoral frameworks, and then the sector frameworks will work by themselves? Are there any sectoral committees?
As I said, several groups of people that were working on this sectoral qualifications framework started to create sectoral skills councils, and these are formal committees that are ruled by our Ministry of Economy through the organization of employers, Polish organization of employers in our country. So they are responsible, among other things, to monitor these frameworks in order to make them relevant. So when they need to be changed, they should tell it, and they should start working on modifying them.
But these are for every sector available, or only for some?
There are 17 such councils at the moment, and
Okay.
10 more
18.
are planned to start their activities.
I can tell you, Aryan, that the initiative comes from the sector. If the sector does not want to cooperate, well, we cannot force the sector to cooperate. But then again, I know the role of skill councils, for example, in Germany, and the role of skill councils in the Netherlands. And we are trying to set the pace for those our skills council also to be so involved in the system as are involved the skill sectors, for example, in Germany, in the Dutch. Well, we tend to, and the main function of the Skills Council is to promote the qualifications, the new types of qualifications based on learning outcomes. They also do research on the qualification and competence needed in the sectors, and then again negotiate also with the ministry what would be, for example, crucial to do in the sector in the case of qualifications to make the sector work better. But it's always the initiative of the certain sector to engage in the IQS. We cannot force them to do it. So we have sectors that are pretty much engaged, and we have sectors that are not really interested in engaging yet.
Yes, but they are included in our law, so they have certain responsibilities due to our qualification system as well.
Thank you. And then I have another question, but maybe if there, если у вас есть вопросы, пожалуйста, пишите ваши.
Should anyone else have questions, please write them in the chat, because this is an opportunity to ask direct questions to our colleagues.
I have a question about qualifications. If you allow me, I will ask the question in Russian, so it's more understandable to others, and you will get the translation. Да, у меня вопрос как раз по рыночным квалификациям.
So I have the question with regard to the market qualifications that you mentioned. As far as I understand, these are the qualifications that are coming from the business associations or professional associations. Could you please explain step by step, using an example of a particular qualification, of how they're being initiated, how they're being implemented, and how they're being used? You mentioned a few words about it, but maybe you could explain, elaborate a bit more, like from the conception to the implementation using a particular qualification, if you have such an example. Thank you.
Okay, I think that the good example is a modern example of the 21st century. So 3D printing. I don't know if you are familiar with 3D printing. It's very popular right now because even teenagers can 3D print almost everything. If you need something, you can print it by yourself. So we have a firm in Poland, X, that was conducting courses on 3D printing. Okay, so what they've done is they heard that IQS accepts market qualifications. Okay, so this firm X came to us, Educational Research Institute, and said, hey, we want to have a qualification with the PQF, EQF level added to the system. What should we do? So we sit together with the firm X, we create specific learning outcomes for the qualifications, we create the validation process for the qualifications, because we are not interested in courses. We are interested in validation of competence. So we create learning outcomes and validation process for the qualification. We assign initially the level of the PQF, EQF to the qualification, and then we send the firm X to the Ministry of Economy and Technology in Poland to simply say, hello, we are firm X, we have these qualifications, we want this qualification to be introduced to the system. The Ministry of Economy and Technology analyzes the qualification, analyzes the learning outcomes, analyzes the level that is assigned to the qualification, and if all the stakeholders, because every market qualification added to the system needs to be also consulted. in Poland. So after the consultation process, after the process of experts sitting on the qualification, because ministry employs experts to analyze the qualifications, if the qualification passes the analysis of the expert and also the level that was initially assigned that the qualification is accepted, then the qualification is put into a bill and is added to the system. So becomes part of the system with assigned EQF, PQF level. And also what the ministry does is ministry assigns the quality assurance body that makes quality for the qualification possible and simply analyzes whether the firm X, when it's giving the qualification and validating the qualification, does everything according to what was in the qualification specified for this qualification. So when the qualification is put in the system, it has a PQF, EQF level, it has a certifying institution. So the firm X can be a certifying institution for the qualification of 3D printing. It has a quality assurance body controlling whether the qualification is validated in a manner that it should be validated, and the system works. And every firm X in Poland, if it's interested in putting a qualification in the system, it can do it, but the qualification must go through the process in the certain ministry to be added to the system, because as we all know, every qualification of the European Union with the assigned EQF level must also be assigned quality assurance and must be conducted according to all the validation process rules. So this is the case of adding a 3D print qualification in the Polish system, and it is certified in Poland. And well, people, because the validation process is something a bit of a new in Poland, because we were, typically we were keen on, you participate in the course, and at the end of the course you are giving a certification, and this is not validation. It's only your participation in the course. So we have this tendency that we teach people that there is a difference between participation and validation. And what's also a bit of a new, that you can join validation without having been conducted on a formal course. You don't need a formal course. Yeah. If you have the competences, you simply go to the certifying institution, and the certifying institution via validation process checks if you have the competence. If you have the competence, you are given the qualification. Ta-da! And we have a working lifelong learning scheme in Poland at the beginning of the road still, but we have it.
Great. Thank you very much. Very
There's
clear.
Another question. Yes. Sorry, there is another question from Marat. He says, these sectoral councils, are the members of these sectoral councils, are they paid in Poland? And how is this work supported? How is all this work supported, all these activities? I can imagine that the people who are coming from the public sector, they, of course, is part of their jobs. Yeah. So, but when you talk about involving people from the private sector here, from NGOs, that are maybe in these sectoral councils, or maybe take initiatives of developing qualifications. How is that supported?
So at the moment, it is supported by European funds. And we are at the stage of creating a conception, what next? But at the moment, it is found from European funds. Our system and our work in Educational Research Institute, which is connected with supporting the system, and also sector councils skills work as well. Yeah.
And then what's next discussion? Where are you? What are the proposals? Because they don't have European funds in Central Asia, so maybe this might be more interesting for them.
Yeah, we are at the moment where we, seeing different funds that are founded from Polish government funds, and we discuss which funds can be used in supporting these activities in the future. So this is a discussion on a political level and between ministries, especially Ministry of Public Funds, to be honest. But the discussion is in progress.
Yeah, but then again, we wanted to have a situation that is in the Western countries when you have the unions of employers who are very interested in being engaged in those processes without being like, you know, specially funded by the governments, because we see those cases in the Western countries. And it will be cool if the Polish employers also see the possibility that it's not only about, you know, gaining funds, it's about generating possibilities of having a well-qualified, better qualified workforce by the participation of the employers in the process of creating qualifications in Poland. Well, it would be, you know, like the Hollywood scenario. But then again, as Agnieszka said, we are trying to develop also the public funding for creating such councils. Also, the ministry responsible for certain sectors also create such councils, and in a way also found those councils. But let's be frank, it's not about funding when it comes to those councils. It's about having the connection between the policymakers and business to create the sphere for public financing and funding those qualifications that are really useful for the business.
Thank you very much. I think we already are actually in the end of our timing now, so we need to wrap up on today, but we will translate your presentation. People will come back to it. We're going to come back to you because there's still a lot of questions about how do you deal with all these different types of qualifications, also in these sectors, and what is decided by ministries and what is decided by people in the sectors. I think so.
That's a very good question that came on the chat.
Yes,
so,
yes. Let's take that question, please, and then we are going to wrap up this section.
The worst case scenario is years. The best case scenario is months. Unfortunately, you know, we began in 2016 with rules being implemented at the end of 2016. So we had this possibility. We had this situation that, you know, ministries were not happy with the new law, because new law means new responsibilities. New responsibilities means a lot of new work. So they were not really keen on, yeah, let's do lifelong learning in Poland. Well, it was not, again, something new. We have to do something. Then again, it took time. But at this point, in 2022, I can tell you that the process of adding new qualifications is very much better than it was 4 years ago. So we might say that we are speaking about more months than years in adding such qualifications. And we are still working on this problem because we identify this as a problem when it comes to the time of adding new qualifications, because, you know, it's adding something to a more complicated system than like the usual system, because you need a quality assurance body. We need to protect that those qualifications at a EQF level are quality based. So this is the case, but we are talking about months, not years, and let's abide to this version.
And I can add that we are aiming at 4 months. This is our goal.
I used to work for QCA, and we had this qualification credit framework. Of course, these were all accredited awarding bodies, but we had a 5-day accreditation procedure for a qualification. So it's even possible to go faster than that. So I just want to thank you very much. I think this has been very interesting, very inspiring.